another episode of A Tuesday Jew. This is episode 12. Tonight, Siyata Deshmaya, I'm not coming to give a nice little vort. I'm coming because something is bothering me. Something is hurting me. And if it hurts me, I know I am not the only one who feels it. There are people listening right now who feel it in their stub. They feel it in their marriage. They feel it in their kinder. They feel it in the shul. They feel it in the yeshiva. They feel it in the shidduch world. They feel it when they open a magazine, look at a picture, walk into a simcha, or see the way people are silently measuring each other. And the feeling is this: we have built so much, but we are losing the hearts. Baruch Hashem, we have beautiful shuls, yeshivas, we have kailalim, we have moistus, we have Chabad houses across the globe, we have shiurim, fabringen, schools, chesed, organizations, camps, events, fundraising dinners, programs, websites, advertisements, campaigns, and institutions. That is not nothing. That is real. That is holy. It's kadosh. But here is the question nobody wants to ask. Can you build a magnificent palace and still leave the people inside freezing? Can you put the right words on every wall, the right picture in every hallway, the right uniform on every child, the right song at every event, and still have a generation that does not know how to breathe? Can a person be surrounded by Torah and still feel spiritually hungry? Can a child know every rule, every expectation, every social code, every way to look like they belong, and still not know that the Eibishter loves them? Can a young person sit in a yeshiva, in a classroom, a fabringen, a shul, a Shabbos table, and still feel that there is no room for the person, the real person inside? Not the polished person, and not the perfect person. Not the person with the right family, the right gelt, the right connections, the right clothing, the right social standing, the right ability to make everybody comfortable. The real person, the person with shilas, the person with anxiety, the person who does not learn at lightning speed, the person whose family story is complicated, the single person tired of being examined like a file, the divorced person who feels like one painful chapter erased their whole dignity, the young couple who looks fine in public but are quietly drowning under financial and social pressure, the person who has fallen and is ashamed to say how badly they want to come back. That person, this person is about the royal palace of Torah, and it is about what happens when we become so busy polishing the palace that we forget to warm the yid inside it. Because Torah is not cold. Torah is not corporate report card. Torah is not a social ladder. Torah is not a way to improve that you are better than the next person. Torah is Torah's chayim, Torah of life. And if the way we present Torah leaves people feeling dead inside, we have to stop. We have to look in the mirror. We have to ask, what did we do with the inheritance our Zaydas and Babas handed us? Let us establish something first. Our generation did not invent Torah. We are standing on the shoulders of Gedolim. Think about Rav Moshe Feinstein. Think about Rav Aaron Kotler. Think about Rav Matisyahu Solomon. Think about the great Torah leaders who rebuilt worlds after the Churban of Europe. These were not men looking for kavod. These did not build Torah so people could show off a lifestyle. They did not carry the pain of gullus, poverty, war, and the rebuilding of broken families so that the next generation could turn Yiddishkeit into competition of cars, homes, clothes, wedding halls, restaurants, pictures, and social statuses. Reb Aaron Kotler did not come to America and build the great centers of Torah so that a young couple would feel they need to lease a luxury vehicle just to prove that they are not failing. Reb Moshe Feinstein did not carry the pain of Klal Yisrael so people could learn how to look from while privately drowning in pressure. The earlier Litvische world, Volozhin, the Beis Halevi, the Bala Mussar, understood that Torah was supposed to be an internal furnace, not a social costume. A furnace. It was supposed to burn away the gaiva. It was supposed to burn away dishonesty. It was supposed to burn away the need to impress people. It was supposed to teach a person how to stand before the Eibishter with no mask. That is why Mussar mattered. Mussar was not about learning another subject so you could sound more sophisticated. It was not about making the right face when somebody talked about an anava. Mussar was the work nobody can fake. It asks, how do you treat people when nobody important is watching? How do you speak to your spouse when you are tired? How do you speak to a child who is not making you proud that day? How do you behave when somebody else gets the kavod you wanted? Can you say, I am wrong? Can you say, I hurt you? Can you say, I don't know? Can you see another Yid's pain without turning away because it makes you uncomfortable? That is Torah, not a costume, not a performance. Torah that enters the bloodstream. Think about Rav Yisro Salanter, who came into the Litvische world and said, it is not enough to know what is right. You have to become the kind of person who can live what is right. You have to work on your anger, your pride, your honesty, your shemayim, and the way you treat another Yid when nobody is watching. Think about Rav Yerucham Levovitz, the great mashkiach of Mir. He taught the generations of Talmidim that Torah is not merely information in the seichel. Torah has to become a living awareness of the Eibishter. It has to enter the way you think, the way you speak, the way you want response, and the way you want response to disappoint, and the way you see another person's neshamah. Think about Rav Chaskel Levenstein, the Mashkiach Amir and Panovich, who carried Mussar, the Vekas, and Yir Shemayim through upheaval, war, and the rebuilding of Torah life. That was not a cold religion. That was a life lived before the Eibishter, a life where a person's inner emes mattered more than their public image. And think about Reb Shlomo Brevda, who brought the living Mussar language to so many people. That has to enter the hearts. It has to change how you wake up in the morning, how you speak to your mashpiach, how you fight your Yetzirah, how you see another Yid. This is the Litvish inheritance people forget. Not only brilliance, not only sharpness, not only one who can say the best svara. The Litvish inheritance is also Mussar. It is avodah de panemius. It is Yir Shemayim. It is the courage to stand before the Eibishter without a mask. And now look at the revolutionary fire of Chassidus. The Baal Shem Tov did not go from shtetl to shtetl to create a corporate franchise network. He did not come to build a brand. He came to wake up the Yid who felt forgotten. He came to the simple worker, the poor Yid, the broken Yid, the Yid who did not know how to learn like the elite scholars, that you are not outside. You are a kind of the Melech. You can say Tehillim, you can cry, and you can dance. You can speak to the Eibishter, and you can serve the Eibishter with the hearts you have. That was a revolution. It was not anti-Torah. It was Torah returning to the people. It was the royal palace opening its doors and saying, there is room here for every neshamah. The lamdan, the simple Yid, the quiet person, the emotional person, the person who needs time, the person carrying the broken hearts. That is the palace we inherited, and we have to ask whether we are still living in it or whether we have begun to replace it with something colder. Now, I'm going to say something that may sting. In too many of our communities, we are living under pressure that our Zaydas and Bubbas would barely recognize. We have allowed consumerism to walk into our holy spaces wearing a shaitel, a black hat, a kapata, a streimel, a nice suit, a bekeshe, a designer label, and a polished smile. And because it wears the right uniform, we pretend it's not there. but it is there. You see it in the pressure on young couples. You see it in the anxiety over homes, cars, schools, simchas, restaurants, vacations, clothing, furniture, pictures and appearances. You see people who can barely get life started, feeling as though they must project a level of wealth they do not actually have. They are leasing an image. They are financing an image. They are stressing over an image, and they go home exhausted because keeping up with an invisible audience is a full-time job. The home is supposed to be a migdash me'at, a small sanctuary, but too many people, the shtub has become a stage. The conversation is not, how can we have more shalom bayis? How can we raise the kinder with warmth? How can we bring the Eibishter into the shtub? The conversation becomes, how does this look? What will people say? Are we keeping up? This is not freedom. This is fear dressed up as success. And it is eating people alive. It is not about a nice home, that a nice home is bad. It is not that a nice car is bad. It is not that a beautiful clothing or a beautiful simcha is bad. Baruch Hashem, if the Eibishter gave a person abundance, use it with hoda'ah and anava. But when a person's worth becomes tied to their presentation, something has gone deeply wrong. When a young woman feels that she has to look like an advertisement to be valued, something has gone wrong. When a young man feels he has to protect gelt he does not have to be considered successful, something has gone wrong. When parents are more terrified of embarrassment than they are concerned about their child's emotional health, something has gone wrong. We have taken a world that should be built on Yiras Shamayim and replaced it with anxiety of keeping up. We are spending our energy on optics, and we wonder why the hearts feel empty. We cannot fill a neshamah with a lease. You cannot heal a marriage with furniture. You cannot give a child self-worth with a brand name. And you cannot build a Torah shtub by trying to impress people who are also secretly exhausted from trying to impress you. That is material. That is the material matrix. And it does not care whether you are Litvish, Chassidish, modern Orthodox, Sephardic, Chabad, or anything else. It wants the same thing from all of us. It wants us afraid. It wants us comparing. It wants us performing. It wants us to distracted to notice that we are losing the heart. The royal palace of Chassidus was never built as a one-size-fits-all factory. After the Baal Shem Tov, and each path understood something important about the human neshama. Karlin taught fire, not fake fire, not performance, a refusal to stand before the Eibishter like a robot. A Karliner davened as if the whole body was saying, Rabbeinu Shalom, I am here. I refuse to sleep in my own life. The Barditchev taught love. The Barditchev Rebbe looked at Yidden and refused to reduce them to their mistakes. He was the defense attorney of Klal Yisrael. He searched for the Nekuda Taiva in the person everyone else had given up on. The Kutsk taught emes. Kutsk was a war against phoniness. The Kutsker Rebbe could not tolerate somebody hiding behind religious language. We're living a lie. Better a painful emes than a polished sheker. Ger took the intensity of truth and turned it into discipline, communal length. Lublin taught even a person walking through a darkness could find a roadmap. Breslov taught no matter how far a person feels, and there is always another conversation they can have with the Eibishter. And now for my family, the Bells on my mother's side. Bells is from a lineage of excellence. It is from a lineage of the Galicianer Palace. And the Galicianer Palace is like majesty. It's like being in England in front of the Queen like that. It has such royalty, such beauty. And the Chabad side, my father's side of the family, Chabad taught us the seichel can awaken the hearts. That is the beauty of the palace. It was enough for different kinds of neshamas. One Yid found the Eibishter through fiery davening, another quiet hisbaininess, another through Mussar, another through learning, another through crying to Hillim, and another through helping a fellow Yid. Another through his hisbaininess, another through the majestic palace of the Belzer Rebbe, and another through a Fabringen. Different doors, one Melech. But today, too often, we build narrow boxes and tell people there is only one acceptable way to look, learn, speak, and work, marry, parent, dress, and serve the Eibishter. And when somebody does not fit the box, we make them feel like they are the problem. No! Sometimes the box is the problem. Sometimes we took a palace built for many neshamas and turned it into an assembly line. Sometimes we told a child who is creative, emotional, practical, simply wired differently, if you cannot become the kind of person we know how to reward, then you do not matter. We may not say those words, but kinder hear them anyway. They hear them in who gets praised. They hear them in who gets invited. They hear them in who gets treated like a future success and who gets treated like a future embarrassment. They hear them in the social air. And then when we act shocked, when they stop coming, we should not be shocked. We should be heartbroken. Now let us look honestly about moistus. Moistus are not bad. We need them. We need yeshivas. We need schools. We need shuls. We need organizations. We need Chabad houses. We need askanim, raising money, running programs, opening doors, and making sure there is a place for Torah to live. But moistus are servants. They are not tachlis. The tachlis is the neshamah. The tachlis is the child. The tachlis is the family. The tachlis is the yid who walks through the door and needs to meet the Eibishter. And every moisid faces the same nesiyain, to protect its image so fiercely that it forgets to protect the person. When a school is worried about its reputation, a struggling child becomes a problem to remove. When a shul is worried only about who gives the biggest donation, a quiet person can become invisible. When a community is worried only about status, the family in pain becomes an embarrassment. When a movement is worried only about showing growth, it can start confusing expansion with depth. A bigger building does not automatically mean bigger hearts. A fuller program does not automatically mean fuller souls. A beautiful brochure does not automatically mean someone is being cared for. 1,000 pictures on a screen does not prove that the lonely person was called. And yes, I'm saying this because it stings. It should sting. We have become too comfortable seeing external success and assuming eternal health. But a person can look successful and be spiritually exhausted. A family can look polished and be financially terrified. A community can look organized and still have people quietly drowning. We cannot measure Kedusha by the size of the building, the number of programs, the amount of money raised, or the strength of the branding. We have to measure it by a harder question. When somebody is hurting, do they feel safe enough to tell the emes? When somebody falls, do we help them stand up, or do we make sure everyone knows they fell? When somebody does not fit, do we try to understand them, or do we just protect the box? That is the test. Let us speak about Chabad with love and with emes. Chabad carries an extraordinary idea. Chachma bin das. There was a reason why my father came back to his grandparents' home. The seichel awakened the heart. The idea is not that a yid should chase a temporary emotional high. The idea is that you think, you contemplate, you take a truth about the Eibishter and do not leave it as information in your head. You work with it until it touches your heart, until it changes your midas, until it changes how you live. That is chesboninus. Not just showing a mimer, not just repeating a vart, not just the right words out of a bringen, thinking about the heart, how the heart moves. Thinking until you ask yourself, if the Eibishter is really here, why am I treating people this way? If every yid has a neshama, why am I judging this person by their appearance? If my life has tachlis, why am I living only for what other people think? That is magnificent. That is Chassidus. The seichel awakens the heart. But there is the danger. When Chassidus becomes a performance, the heart gets left behind. When a person's learning how to sound inspired but feels terrified to say, I am confused, the heart gets left behind. When people know the language of hisbaininess but do not know how to sit with grief, shame, anxiety, loneliness, or doubt, the heart gets left behind. And after Gimel Tammuz, this danger became much sharper. The passing of the Rebbe in 1994 left Chabad with an enormous, painful task. How do you carry a living fire forward when the Rebbe is no longer physically present? And Chabad has done extraordinary things. We have to say that with Haida'ah, across the world, Shluchim have opened their homes, welcoming strangers, taught Torah, visited hospitals, helped students, soldiers, families, travelers, and people who would otherwise have gone nowhere to go. That is real. That is a tremendous chus. But every movement after the histalkus of a giant Rebbe must ask itself a painful question. Are we preserving the spark or the only structure? Are we making room for a real Avodah or only a polished picture of Avodah? Are we helping people become closer to the Eibishter or teaching them how to present a successful brand? And this is where we have to speak plainly. A movement can begin with the revolutionary fire of Chassidus and slowly turn itself into something that feels like a franchise. A person sees the same logo, the same photograph, the same language, the same brochures, the same fundraising campaigns, the same polished programming, the same public message, the same visual identity again and again. And starts to feel like an inner avodah, and it starts to feel less like an inner avodah and more like a spiritual McDonald's. Not because the persons serving are bad people, not because every shliach is fake, chas v'shalom. There's only Mesiras Nefesh, dig shluchim all over the world, doing work that most people cannot even imagine. But a system can still become McDonaldized. It can become standardized, packaged, scripted, measured by expansion, measured by numbers, measured how people came, how much money was raised, how polished the event looked, how successful the building campaign was, and how strong the branding appears. And when that happens, the thing that made Chassidus holy, the personal, raw, transforming encounter between a neshamah and the Eibishter, can get buried under the packaging. That is the tragedy. The Rebbe's Torah was not given to become a marketing kit. It was not given to become a uniform. It was not given so a precious person could learn how to look inspired in a photograph. It was not given to change the inner person, to break the ego, to awaken Ahavas Yisrael, to make a person more honest, more humble, more alive, more connected to the Eibishter. When the outside becomes more important than the inside, something holy starts to feel fake. And young people can smell fake from a mile away. They may not know the right words for it, but they feel it. They feel it when the message is more polished than the personal. They feel when the program is bigger than the relationship. They feel when a person is being treated as a number, a donor, a prospect, a future shliach, a success story, or a photograph opportunity instead of a neshamah. And then we ask why some of them become cynical. Why should not be surprised? A young person does not need another package. They need a mashpia who can sit with them in the dark. They need someone who can say, tell me the emes, I will not run away. They need a farbringen where a person can say, I am struggling, and come closer. And now with pain and not with hate, let us speak about our kinder are seeing in Crown Heights and other places where Chassidus should be alive. They are seeing a world where people talk about the Rebbe, talk about Mashiach, talk about Geula, talk about the highest madregas, and then live with a hunger for Gashmias that would make an honest person ask, what happened to us? They see pressure around $3 million homes. They see pressure around status. They see the pressure around the newest, most expensive everything. They see $25,000 shetelach treated as of the basic need, while somebody's inner pain is treated as an inconvenience. Let us be clear. A woman is not the problem. A shaitel is not the problem. A home is not the problem. Gashmias itself is not the enemy. The problem is when the Gashmias pours into the neshamah and takes over the place where Torah, tznius, humility, and avodah are supposed to live. The problem is when a community begins to confuse expensive with elevated. The problem is when a person can spend hours comparing homes, vacations, clothing, weddings, and appearance, but cannot sit for 10 honest minutes with a child who is crying. The problem is when we speak about Mashiach all day, but build a culture that is completely trapped in Edom's obsession with presentation, power, and physical display. And we have to ask an uncomfortable question. If the Rebbe were physically here today, would he be proud that Hasidus became a race for attention, real estate, money, and outward status? Would he be proud when some people turn Mashiach into noise, slogans, and pressure, while their quiet avodah of refining midos, learning tefillah, avos Yisrael, and helping a broken yid gets pushed aside? I cannot answer for the Rebbe. Nobody should pretend they can, but we can ask ourselves, are we living in a way that makes the Rebbe's Torah more alive? Or are we using the Rebbe's name to cover a culture of ego and distraction? That is a question every chassid has to ask with trembling. Because Mashiach is not a costume. Mashiach is not a bumper sticker. Mashiach is not a loud slogan. And that lets a person avoid working on their midos. Mashiach means that the world becomes a dwelling place for the Eibishter. And the dwelling place for the Eibishter cannot be built on arrogance, consumer obsession, fake perfection, or a public image that hides a private emptiness. And let us say something else carefully and truthfully. Tznius is not only a question of hemliness, sleeves, hats, jackets, or what is visible from the outside. Tznius is also behavior. Tznius is how we speak. Tznius is whether we need the entire world to see what we own. Tznius is whether we turn our lives into an advertisement. Tznius is whether our conversations are filled with lashon hara, mockery, attention-seeking, and judgment. Tznius is whether a person can be modest when they are successful. Tznius is whether we know how to stop putting ourselves on display. Women deserve to be spoken about with dignity. Men deserve to be spoken with dignity. This is not a speech to a policewoman while excusing men. Men also have tznius. A man can wear the right hat, the right kapata, the right bekeshe, the right shtreimel, and still be completely consumed with kavod, money, power, and showing off. A man can speak in the language of Torah while living in the language of ego. That is not tznius. That is not chassidus. And that is the uniform without a heart. And we cannot keep pretending that expensive uniforms are the ikar. The ikar is emes. The ikar is a nava. The ikar is your shemayim. The ikar is how a person treats a spouse, a child, a neighbor, a worker, and a struggling yid. The ikar is whether a person makes room for the Eibishter in their life. We have to understand what is happening underneath all of this. Yaakov Avinu is not just a historical figure. Yaakov is the inner voice of the Yid. Yaakov is a Kol HaKol Yaakov, the voice of Torah, tefillah, humility, inner work, and life connected to the Eibishter. Esav is the obsession with the outside, the hands of Esav, power, display, possession, physical appetite, the need to be seen as strong, the need to win, and the need to own, the need to show the world what you have. And Amalek comes along with coldness. Amalek says, do not feel, do not care, do not let another Yid's pain slow you down. Amalek says, turn your Vaida into routine, turn your Torah into information, turn your Hasidus into a slogan, turn your Mashiach into a public performance, and turn your fellow Yid into a number. That is the danger when we take the outside obsession of Esav and confide into the coldness of Amalek. We can create a religious life that looks firm but feels empty. We can wear the right levush. We can we can say the right words, we can attend the right events, we can post the right pictures, we can speak about the highest things and still feel very far away from the inner voice of Yaakov Avinu. That should frighten us, not because we are hopeless, because we still have a choice. Every day we choose, am I building the world of Yaakov, or am I feeding the world of Esav and Amalek? Am I building a shtub where a child feels safe to tell the truth, or am I building a stage where everyone has to perform? Am I using my money with humility, or am I using it to make other people feel small? Am I wearing Yiddishkeit, or am I living Yiddishkeit? Am I speaking about Mashiach, or am I preparing a place inside myself for the Eibishter to dwell? That is Avodah. Now, let us talk about Kiruv. Bring a Yid closer to Torah is holy. Welcoming somebody who feels far away is holy. Giving a person a Shabbos meal, a class, a pair of tefillin, a place to daven, a connection, a friend that can change a life. But the work cannot stop with the first spark. You cannot hand somebody a uniform and call it a Jewish life. You cannot teach a person a few slogans, a few nigunim, a few external symbols, and then act surprised when they do not know how to build a shtub, learn it independently, handle family conflict, manage pain, or keep going when the inspiration disappears. A person needs sharish. A person needs patient chinuch. A person needs halacha, yes, but they also need friendship. They need mentors. They need somebody who will still answer the phone after the exciting first stage is over. They need a community that does not treat them like a project for a brochure, because bringing someone in and then leaving them alone when life gets complicated is not Avos Yisrael. It is spiritual marketing, and we have to be honest enough to know the difference. The same is true with our own children. We can spend money bringing outsiders close and still fail to notice a child in our own home who is drifting. We can put all our energy into the big public event and fail to sit down with the teenager who has not smiled in months. We can build and talk about Kiruv while our own children feel like they cannot tell us the emes. That is a tragedy. The first Yid you are responsible to reach is often sitting at your own table. Now, let us go back to the yeshiva world. The Brisker approach is a gift. Conceptual clarity is a gift. Serious learning is a gift. But when any derech becomes the only measuring stick of worth, it becomes an idol. When yeshiva rewards only the fastest, sharpest, and most abstract mind in the room, it quietly creates a caste system. The top boy feels like he is the future. The boy who learns differently feels like he is the problem. The creative child feels like he is wasting space. The practical child feels like he is less holy. The sensitive child learns to hide, and then sometimes he leaves. Not because he hates Torah, because he thinks Torah hates him. And if that sentence does not break our hearts, we are not listening. A child, a young person can be struggling with learning and still have a beautiful neshamah. A young person can be poor at abstract logic and still become an incredible father, a faithful husband, a caring teacher, a successful worker, a person of integrity, a person who makes every other Yid feel seen. Why are all these qualities not treated as greatness? Why do we make so many people feel that they are not the elite learner, that they are the leftover? Torah is bigger than that. Klal Yisrael is bigger than that. A community that only knows how to value one kind of excellence is not building Torah greatness. It is building a social ranking system. A social ranking system always creates casualties. The quiet boy, the awkward boy, the boy with learning challenges, the boy with complicated shtub, the girl who is trying to find a path but feels she was always being measured, the single person who hears the questions, sees the looks, and feels like they are being evaluated rather than loved. The divorced person who feels like one painful chapter erased their entire dignity. These are not problems to manage. They are neshamas. And if you see a neshama drifting into the cold, you do not get to say, that is not my problem. You do not get to hide yourself. You call, you invite, you listen, you make room, you remind them you are still one of us. You are still a kind of the Eibishter. So what is the answer? The answer is not less Torah. The answer is not throwing away halacha. The answer is not tearing down every ma'aseh. The answer is not pretending standards do not matter. The answer is not the rebellion of the heart, a peaceful rebellion, a holy rebellion, a rebellion against fake perfection, a rebellion against material comparison, a rebellion against measuring people by their resume, family name, wealth, clothing status, or ability to perform. A rebellion against a culture that values the person who looks best over the person who is doing the quiet work of becoming better. A rebellion against the lie that a child who learns differently is less valuable. A rebellion against the lie that someone who is struggling is an embarrassment. A rebellion against the lie that we have to choose between the emes and kindness. We do not. The Torah demands both. This week, do something real. Ask your child a question. This is not about achievement. Ask, how are you doing? Then wait. Call somebody who may feel forgotten. Invite the person who does not know if they belong. Put the phone away and look your spouse in the eyes. Stop comparing your shtub to somebody else's image. Learn a piece of Mussar Chassidus and ask not only, what does it say, but what does it ask of me? And then the next time somebody is struggling, do not ask first, what is wrong with them? Ask, what happened to them? That question can change a life. Remember, this is the month of Elul. We have to work on ourselves. We have to help our fellow Yidden. We have to work to make ourselves medayik in this world so we can come into Tishrei clean, pure, and have an amazing year going forward. My friends, we have inherited a royal palace. A palace built by Torah giants. A place built by Baal Mussars. A palace built by Hasidic Rebbes who knew that one broken heart Yid saying Tehillim in the back of a shul could be precious before the Eibishter. A palace built by people who understood that Torah is not supposed to make you cold. It is supposed to make you alive. So let us stop worshiping the container and forgetting the contents. Let us stop polishing the outside while the inside freezes. Let us stop confusing brand with emunah, image with kedusha, expansion with depth, and performance with avodah. Let us stop giving Esav and Amalek room inside our holy spaces. Let us bring back the voices of Yaakov Avinu, the voices of Torah, the voices of Tefillah, the voices of humility, the voices of emes, the voices that say a fellow Yid is not a number, a fellow Yid is a neshamah. We need learning, we need standards, we need ma'aseh, we need serious Torah, but above all, we need hearts that are alive, hearts that can feel another Yid's pain, hearts that can admit when they are wrong, hearts that can stand before the Eibishter without pretending, hearts that can say to the struggling person, you are not outside. You are not outside. You are kind of the Melech, and the palace has room for you. My name is Feivel, and this is the Tuesday Jew, Texas. Wishing you a beautiful, meaningful, and a beautiful week. Please enjoy the rest of Elul. Keep learning. Get close to the Eibishter. Love you all. See you on Friday for Kisavai. Have a good week. Kol Tuv.